This is News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. I'm Matt Martin. We've got Dave King on the line and also Congressman Arrington. Congressman Arrington, how are you doing today?
Hey, Matt. I'm, doing well. I'm not never as good as when I'm in West Texas, but, got to do my job. So I'm in the swamp today. Just cast a vote on police reform. Hope we can talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
Voted against the Democrat bill. No surprise. I'll tell you why if you care to know.
Yeah, the Democrat police reform bill. Now, I do have some questions about how, I guess, about Washington works, but I know that the Democrats completely stuffed the bill over in, they put a brick wall up, essentially stopping the bill over in the Senate. That looked a lot different from the one from the House. What is wrong in the House bill?
Well, thank God for the Senate. I never thought I would say that, the House under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi continues to just be, straight partisan exercise. The House bill is just a top-down Washington one-size-fits-all. Typical. Let's control everything from Washington D.C. Let's federalize it. Let's take it over. Policing is a state and local issue. Okay, and that's the way it's set up, the way it's always been. And but in the Democrat bill, there's mandates. They ban chokeholds. They ban things that would jeopardize the life and safety of police. They would do away with qualified immunity, which just would open up for a litany of lawsuits. There's just a lot of ways it's broken. Again, it's just a federal takeover of policing, and the Senate bill is very different and mainly just puts a database together so that you can people can know the disciplinary record of police throughout the country. And so that when there is a bad apple, and there are bad apples, that they aren't cycled through the system. And I think that's to me the biggest thing we can do at the federal government is put some transparency in the mix, and the local community needs to hold the local leaders accountable, and then we need to hold accountable the bad actors and get rid of them so they don't cycle through and continue to make the vast majority of cops who are honorable and do a great job make them look bad. So the Pelosi bill is terrible. We voted against it. It was pretty much a straight party vote.
So, Congressman, could I jump in here and ask you a question?
Yeah. Hey,
Can
Dave.
you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so glad you're here. I was looking forward and hoping we would get this opportunity to talk to you this morning. But sometimes with what is going on right now in this country, I have to pinch myself to make sure that I'm not dreaming. For me, it's a surreal situation to see what's going on. And quite honestly, we see Donald Trump's poll numbers going down. And it seems like that the majority of this country is good with what is going on, with the total. I don't even know what you call it. I mean, we've got people taking over parts of an American city. We're not talking about defunding police. Just crazy, off-the-wall craziness. And I just can't understand why we don't have a backlash from the American people. Just explain to me what is going on out there, because I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I'm not sure I would put much stock in the polls. Those were the same polls that said that Trump was going to lose the election. But I think the media, the mainstream media, they hate this president. They know what's at stake in 2020, and they're trying to just add to the perception that there's just chaos in the land. And if there is any chaos, it's generally in these cities that are run by Democrats that have allowed their cities to be ransacked. They've allowed for mob violence to jeopardize the safety of their law-abiding citizens. And this president has been a law and order president. So I'm with you. And I think in the end, people do not want to tolerate what's been happening. And again, I think the media is doing their job to make sure people think in their mind that this president has lost control. The fact is, these cities, again, a lot of these issues, especially around policing, they're local issues. And with respect to Minneapolis, if there's a problem, if there's a cultural problem of corruption, whether it's race-based or just police brutality, unprofessionalism, where is the accountability with the mayor? Where is the accountability with the local leaders? Because that's where it ought to start. And instead, everybody's defaulting to Washington to solve their problems.
No,
well, Congressman, tell me why we're not hearing more from the Republicans. I would think the Republicans right now should be just raising hell.
Well, I think most of my colleagues are. I don't know how much that's getting picked up, but I think they think the majority of us are supporting the president and saying, "Hey, prosecute people that are vandalizing and defacing monuments." Here's one thing that I think we should be doing, Dave, that I'm frustrated with as well. While we're fly-specking police reform, and there's certainly, like in any profession, they're the bad apples. The vast majority, as I said, are professional. They do a great job. They risk their lives. But what we should be talking about is domestic terrorism. We should also be talking about how we increase the penalty to prevent and to punish people who, under the guise of the First Amendment right to peacefully protest, are assaulting people and looting and destroying property. So I think that's the imbalance here that and the injustice is while we're fly-specking policing, it just feels like we're allowing the rest of the country to burn. There are several members that are trying to get focus on that, and I would expect that after this policing, you'll see some of the legislation. It's not going to leave the House because of the Democrat control, but you're going to have more people talking about it.
Congressman, we do have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Congressman Jodey Arrington right after these messages. We're back here on Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin on 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We have Congressman Arrington on the phone. Congressman, one of the things that we're getting a lot about, I guess even Donald Trump has come out and in favor of it. The Democrats have come out with the HEROES Act, which is way more than Donald Trump has come out for. I don't want to say he's for that, but it seems to be that that they're looking for another stimulus package. But the Republicans seem to be a lot more standoffish and worried about the deficit and whatnot. What are you hearing in Washington, and what can we possibly expect?
Well, the HEROES Act was $3 trillion, and it was a bailout of union pensions and cities and states that were fiscally broken before COVID. But it was terrible. Again, another partisan bill that was rammed through the House. There will be another COVID package. It'll be much smaller. It'll be targeted. I think the main thing, Matt, is that we've got to take away the disincentives to work, like unemployment insurance. It's paying people more to not work than to go back to work. So I think turning the economy on and managing that responsibly, taking away the disincentives. There's certainly some gaps to fill. But mostly it's about reopening, and it's about removing the barriers. Right now you have about 40 million people that are unemployed, and 75% of them are making more on unemployment than they were in their previous job. There are other ways to put some incentives in place to rev up the economy in terms of tax breaks and removing, again, the drag and just gassing up the economy so that we can return to pre-COVID as quickly as possible. The fundamentals are there. It's going to take time. But you're not going to see the $3 trillion hero package from Nancy Pelosi. But there will be one more, I think, comprehensive COVID-related bill. I'm trying to push to put in a provision that forces Congress to deal with the debt, and we now have the debt at the highest level per GDP. So as a percentage of our economy, our debt is higher than World War II, which was the highest ever in the history. And I've got 30 Democrats and 30 Republicans. We led a letter to the leadership, and we're trying to push for that because ultimately we're going to move past and stave off the public health crisis and the economic crisis that would ensue. But if there's ever a sovereign debt crisis, we can't bail ourselves out of that. I think that's the biggest long-term threat to the country.
Okay. And Congressman, as far as Donald Trump, he's kind of seemed to have let's get the materials to the local governments and let the local governments take care of the COVID-19 issues as it pops up with them. What are your thoughts on his, the way he's been taking care of the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, again, the mainstream media is going to try to make folks think that he's derelict in his job, but his job is to partner with the states on critical equipment and what have you, protective gear, PPE, et cetera, testing. But he's rightfully let the private sector lead that because the government was way too slow, and we wouldn't be where we are today with expanded capacity there, which is critical. States ought to be able to determine, and local communities, what's best in how they return and how they manage it. There will certainly be flare-ups, and every state and every part of the country is different and should be managed differently. There's some general precautions everybody should take. We should continue to be extra cautious with vulnerable populations, the elderly, and those with underlying conditions. But I think the president is doing the right thing. One of the strengths of this country in this time of crisis is federalism, meaning, that the federal government has a narrow, specific, limited role, but the rest of this should be deferred to the states and local governments. The worst thing we can do is to get back to a shutdown situation because that's going to have an impact not just on our economy, but on health and safety of people far greater than COVID could if we ever got there. So I'm very pleased with how things are being managed in Texas. Not every state has that kind of leadership, and we've seen the cases go up. As long as it doesn't inundate the healthcare system, then this is part of the new risk, and we've got to manage those risks because it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, how do you think, of course, Texas, I was just noticing last night, it's one of the states that is supposedly doing the worst, if that is to be believed. It seems like we are not, as a state, going in the right direction here on this COVID-19. Your thoughts?
Well, that's what they'd have you believe. We have fewer deaths than any other state, and we have less cases in all 254 counties than New York City. Look, we know, Dave, that we're going to see more cases as we test more, number one. So we're testing more. Number two, we know we're going to see more cases and hospitalization as we open because that's just a fact of life with COVID as a new risk profile for this country and for our communities. As long as that was never the goal. The goal was never, as much as we don't want anyone to die of the flu or COVID or anything. But the goal was to say, as long as we don't inundate the health system, we've got to get back to work, and we've got to give people the chance to make a living again. And the implications, again, for not long-term are far greater. So it's no surprise to me that if you open your economy up, you're taking greater risk, you're going to see more cases. As long as it's manageable, and that you're keeping the most vulnerable in a more precautious posture, then I think this is the wise and responsible way to manage it. So I'm not surprised the cases are up. Again, I think it's manageable, And I think, again, the mainstream media wants to make it look like chaos because of Trump and, cavalier on issues like COVID. And it's just, we got to get new leadership. And that's to be expected between now and the end of November, or now and November elections.
Yeah. All right. Well, Congressman, we only have about 20 seconds left. Thank you for coming out or calling in, and hopefully we can hear from you again pretty soon.
Great to be with you all, Dave, Matt. God bless, and go West Texas.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. All right. We'll be right back on Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin.